Welcome to Dungeon Academics. My name is Thomas and I will be your instructor. Today I'd like to talk about something that Dungeons & Dragons does very well, except when it doesn't, and that's problem solving. Pretty much every tabletop roleplay game is a game of problem solving. And those problems might be social, they might be exploration, or they might be combat based. It is up for the team of players to work out what solutions they can activate to try and resolve this problem. This could be social negotiations, it could be schmoozing and romancing, it could be sneaky and skullduggery, or it could be through acts of violence. All three are often useful for most problems, but it's up to the players to work out which is going to be the most effective for them to achieve and going to cause the least amount of trouble for them. I'd like to give an example from a few years ago. I was playing a campaign with a group of friends and we were travelling on a barge down a river and there was a bridge guarded by a troll. And the troll wanted to enact a quite hefty toll to get past its bridge. A toll that I wasn't particularly willing to pay. Now my character was a bard, so he hopped off the barge, went up to the bridge and started schmoozing with the troll. And then using my various bard skills, possibly the friends cantrip as well, convinced the troll that we were good friends. And in its state of confusion, the troll let the barge slip past. By the time the troll realised that I had cast a spell on him, the barge was already past and I'd leapt off the bridge to join the rest of the party, thanks to Featherfall for not taking any damage jumping off a bridge. By then, the troll was far in the horizon and couldn't do anything more. And I thought to myself, that's a great solution to the problem. We got past that and all it cost me was a level 1 spell slot for the Featherfall. Problem solved. And I asked the DM, we get full experience for that because, we didn't use violence, but we got past. The DM said, no, you don't get full experience because the troll's still alive. And he made a very good point with this. That we don't get the experience point for killing the troll. We get the experience points for removing the problem. And we'd bypassed the problem for ourselves, but we'd left that problem there for everyone else. So we're not going to get full experience points because the next barge that comes down the river is going to have to deal with that troll. A more permanent solution that didn't necessarily involve killing the troll would have got us more experience points. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I think that's the right call to make. Bypassing a problem without giving it a permanent solution is not as good as a permanent solution for a problem. Dungeons & Dragons handles this really, really well. With a bit of good games mastering, most problems can be resolved permanently or temporarily using a variety of different techniques. But what Dungeons & Dragons does poorly is problem solving in combat. Because once a fight starts, every player has their favourite tool, and they will probably use that favourite tool exclusively. Once you start specialising in combat with Dungeons & Dragons, it is very hard to stop using your favourite tool. I'm going to give you an example, and this is one that I was Dungeon Master for. So this is partially my fault, and I don't think I did anything wrong within the context of the game, but I certainly didn't improve it. One of my players was playing a paladin and favoured the glaive or halberd as their weapon. This is a very popular choice because it is a great weapon, so it does a lot of damage and it can be used with Great Weapon Master. But it's also a polearm, so it can be used with Polearm Master as well. Now the player had quite specialised in this. They'd taken Great Weapon Fighting as their fighting style, and once they got a few levels, they took Great Weapon Master as a feat. At this point, any weapon that isn't a great weapon is kind of useless to them. Even if you present them with a reasonably powerful magical weapon, if it's not a great weapon, they're probably not going to use it. Knowing that, when a piece of loot turned up in the game that was supposed to be a magic spear, I reflavoured it to be a magic glaive, because that way it would still be useful. And in my naivety, I thought I'm doing my player a favour here. I'm giving them a bit of better equipment. But what I'm actually doing is helping them dig an even deeper hole. Because now they're definitely not going to want to use anything other than this magical glaive. And when they picked up Polearm Master a few levels later, the grave got even deeper. There's no way to climb out of this. Even the most powerful magic weapon that you could give them isn't as good as the additional abilities they get for using a glaive. If I was to offer them the best longsword in the game, they would be giving up so much. They'd be giving up Great Weapon Fighter, Great Weapon Master, and Polearm Master, and the additional benefits of reach, and the fact that they've already got a quite good magic glaive. So they are now hyper-specialised. Whatever problem I throw at them, their answer is glaive, because that's the tool that they're best with. I think that's a problem. I think it leads to quite one-dimensional gameplay. And I think the issue is with the rules itself. The rules encourage players to specialise. The rules encourage dungeon masters to reward and support this specialisation. And you end up with players who are so specialised they only do one thing. There is an apt expression: when all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. I think that applies here. So what can we do to change this? Is this even a problem? Well, I actually think yes. Through my experience playing Dungeons and Dragons quite a lot and trying out quite a few different classes, I discovered absolute joy in having turns where you do lots of different things, where you're attacking different targets, using different weapons and different abilities. Having a turn where you do one attack as part of your action, a different kind of attack as a bonus action, and then casting a cantrip also as part of your attack action. Thank you, Blade Singers with the quarterstaff. I found that this was a really fun combo, doing 3 different things in one turn. I've also played Way of the Drunken Master Monk, and that encourages you to move around the battlefield and attack different targets. And this was really great fun. Now, if your idea of fun is mathematically optimizing your character to do the most damage against a single target and attacking one target exclusively until it is dead, then all power to you. But I'd recommend trying something different. Try characters that are optimized to use different abilities and attack different targets and move around. I think you'll find combat becomes a lot more fun than I'll attack this target, I'll attack the same target again, I'll attack the same target again with exactly the same weapon and exactly the same abilities. Changing your turn up and doing different things makes it fun. So, how can we encourage Dungeons and Dragons players and Dungeon Masters to have this? Because this, I think, is a problem baked into the core mechanics. Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that players have different tools in combat. Give players options that force them to specialise in more than one thing. This doesn't mean that they can't specialise in a weapon. They can have a favourite weapon and they can specialise in that weapon, but make sure their abilities say you get this ability on this weapon and another weapon. Allow them to double up. Avoid hyper-specialised enhancements that only apply to one piece of equipment. If you've got a character who is proficient with a scimitar and a hammer, and they are both good, they're not going to be encouraged just to use one weapon all the time over the other one. Okay, what else? Give players problems that require different tools to solve. I've had a thought about this, and I'll probably cover that in another video, but if you make it so that different weapons have different levels of effectiveness against different armours, you can actually change the dynamics of combat. If you make blunt weapons better against heavy armour, and slashing weapons better against medium armour, and piercing weapons better against light armour, You can have a situation where the player's going to go, well, that goblin wearing leather armour, I want to stab with my short sword, but that goblin wearing chainmail, I want to slash at with my scimitar, or light hammer, or spear, or whatever combination of weapons they've got. Make it so that different targets are actually better targeted with certain weapons, and make it so that the players actually want to change which weapons they're using from target to target. If you reward clever player thought and clever player equipment choice, you will encourage players to take different actions during their turn. There's also mechanics I've thought of that encourage players to try and attack as many different targets as they can in one turn. I've covered that in previous videos. The basic premise is that any enemy that hasn't been attacked will get advantage on their first attack each turn. And any enemy that's been attacked by 2 or more creatures gets disadvantage on their first attack every turn. So the entire team is now encouraged to try and make sure that every single target is hit at least once, and preferably every single target is hit at least twice by 2 different players. This makes a more realistic situation as well. Rather than ignoring most of the combatants and just focusing on one until it's dead, you're trying to run round and fight everything at the same time. I think that's more fun. A final piece is to encourage players to do different things. I've talked about this in other videos, and I'm going to talk about it in another video today, but the combo mechanic that I've thought up, where you have a modified rule for weapon masteries, and you get rewards for using as many different weapon masteries as you can in one turn. So let's say you had 3 weapon masteries that you could use with this weapon and 3 different weapon masteries you could use with this weapon, and you're trying to make sure that you use all 6 of them in one turn. That's a lot of different attacks. That's not a problem right now. I'll deal with that later. But you get a bonus by using as many different abilities as possible. So you're trying to use different abilities against different targets because it's more effective against different targets, and you get a bonus by using lots of different things. This will create turns where, rather than just doing the same thing 3 times in a row, your players are running across the battlefield, trying to attack as many different targets as they can, trying to use as many different weapons and abilities as they can. I think that's going to make combat a lot more fun. Yes, it will take a little bit longer, but this is not time when people have stopped going, what the hell am I going to do? It's going to be, okay, I want to do this different ability and this different ability and this different ability. This is going to be active time when the players are doing something that's fun. And I think that's what the game's all about, having fun. Combat shouldn't be a grind where you do the same thing over and over and over and only changing target when it's dead. More chaotic combat where it's dynamic. The team is working together to try and make sure all the enemies are engaged. It's fun. I've played combats like this, and trust me, they are better. Well, that's a very subjective statement. They're better for me. Maybe they'd be better for you as well. I'd love to hear what you think about this, because it's quite a radical idea. So let me know what you think, and enjoy your next game, whatever it may be.